Let's testify, man. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord, but you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? Because the God that I serve, he's always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it out. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing that. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be a really quick live stream. I apologize in advance. The main reason is it's been a crazy day. Had to basically, I'm not going to get into the gory details because it is not pleasant to describe, but I was having some symptoms over the weekend. Part of the reason that I was so wiped out yesterday. And so I called my doctor. My doctor's like, no, you definitely need to get that checked out, and referred me to a specialist. Saw the specialist today, and looks like I'm going to have yet another surgery. So, woohoo! One more for the punch card. And yeah, it's not going to be a pleasant one. It's not going to be a. It's just to make it clear. This is not a life-threatening event, but it is going to be a very uncomfortable event. And the surgery, again, not like serious surgery, like in like open heart surgery, something crazy like that, but the recovery from it is known to be rather uncomfortable. So that's just what I'm going to be going through over the next couple of months. Probably still have to get the MRI done on my neck. Haven't heard back on that yet, so working on that. Tristan says, hey, good to see you, buddy. Truck reviewer in the house says hi. And Stanley says, free toaster. No idea why. All right, so without further ado, I want to get right into the scripture because, like I said, this is gonna be a really fast one. I apologize. I'm not gonna get to all your chats if you guys leave a lot of them, but I got to do what I got. All right, so today we're going to get into Leviticus chapter 5. Now, here's the chapters I've said before, and you guys probably know this by now, but just in case somebody's watching this that doesn't know, the chapters and verses of the Bible were added after the fact. All the original scrolls that we're reading the stuff from did not have chapters and verses. It was not broken down by chapter and verse. It was simply added so that you can easily reference a specific section of Scripture. Which unfortunately nowadays people will take one verse out of context and try to build a doctrine around it. But the problem is, a verse was never meant to be taken on its own. And so that would be like me pulling down a copy of, Moby Dick and pulling out one sentence out of the book and trying to say that that's what the book is about. Most of the time you're going to be wrong. So, yeah. Let's see. And Robert says, shalom today. Shalom, shalom. Stanley says, surgery punch card. Oh, yeah. I'm working on the surgery punch card, so I should get a free toaster. I should, man. I have had so many effing surgeries. It's stupid. Let's see. Stanley says, when is your next comic book coming out? No, you're asking Stanley. I'm sorry. I'm a little out of it. Mercer says it's clobbering time again and says good luck to you. Thank you, my friend. Let's see. And yeah, labeling each paragraph might have been changed the way the Bible is understood. I think so. I think it should have been broken down by paragraph. But the reason I mention all that is that now we're going to get into, you notice that Leviticus 1, 2, 3, 4, very simple, straightforward pattern. In fact, if you're going to break it down by chapter, it makes a whole lot of sense to do it exactly like you did. Because Leviticus 1 covered the burnt offering, Leviticus 2, the grain offering, Leviticus 3, the fellowship offering, Leviticus 4, the sin offering. Now we get to Leviticus 5 and we get more of the sin offering, and then it starts the guilt offering, which will be finished in Leviticus 6. So it's a little frustrating because it's like they were on a roll here, but then they kind of messed it up. Because honestly, the first 13 verses here should have been a part of Leviticus 4, because we're continuing on with the guilt offering. And let me see if I can adjust this size a bit. Oh, yeah, because if I do that, well, we're just going to have to deal with it for right now. Because, well, if I do this, there, that's a little better. And I can do this. There. Okay. All right, so Leviticus chapter 5, starting at verse 1. And actually, let me go back and turn that off. Okay. If anyone sins because they do not speak up or when they hear a public charge to testify regarding something they have seen or learned about, they will be held responsible. In other words, you cannot, lie by omission, right? If somebody says, who witnessed this event? And you're like, no, you need to speak up. So it's not just like we say, you shall not bear false witness. In other words, you can't testify in a lie against your neighbor. But at the same time, you cannot not testify for whatever reason. Whether you want to not testify because you could let somebody you don't like get off, or you don't want to testify because somebody you like might get in trouble. You need to testify to what you saw, and you need to be honest about it. If anyone becomes aware that they are guilty, if they unwittingly touch anything ceremonially unclean, whether the carcass of a clean animal, wild or domestic, or any unclean creature that moves along the ground, and they are unaware that they have become unclean, but then they are come to realize their guilt, or they touch a human uncleanliness, anything that would make them unclean, even though they are unaware of it, but they learn of it and realize their guilt, or if anyone thoughtlessly takes an oath to do anything, whether good or evil, in any matter one might carelessly swear about, even though they are unaware of it. In other words, and Christ reiterates this, by the way, in the New Testament. You shouldn't just willy-nilly make an oath to something. Oh, I swear I will do that. That's not something you should take lightly. When anyone becomes aware that they are guilty of these matters, they must confess in what way they have sinned. As a penalty for the sin they have committed, they must bring an offering to the Lord, a female lamb or goat from the flock as a sin offering. Notice it's a female lamb or goat this time. And the priest shall make atonement for them and for their sin. Anyone who cannot afford a lamb is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons. See, there is, in fact, it's kind of funny because there is, in fact, built-in welfare programs in the Bible. But yeah, anyone who cannot afford a lamb is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the Lord as a penalty for their sin, one for a sin offering, one and the other for a burnt offering. Now, they say this because what you should do is there's actually, if you have to do a sin offering, you should do the sin offering, which is basically atonement for the sin. Then you do the burnt offering in order to regain your relationship with God, to show God that you are committed to Him. Then you should actually do a fellowship offering, but most people, of course, don't do any offerings anymore. If, however, they cannot afford 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, they're to bring an offering for their sin, 1/10 of an ephah of the fine. That's just I don't know how much an ephah is, but 1/10 of an ephah is a pretty small amount of the finest flour for a sin offering. They must not put olive oil or incense in it. Remember, you put olive oil and incense in the grain offering, but the grain offering is meant to be a pleasing aroma to God, like all the other earlier offerings. The sin offering is not. This is you basically saying I'm so sorry. But you're not to put olive oil incense in it because it is a sin offering. They are to bring it to the priest, who shall take a handful of it as a memorial portion and burn it on the altar of the food offerings presented to the Lord. It is a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for them in any of the sins they have committed, and they will be forgiven. The rest of the offering will belong to the priest, as is in the case with the grain offering. So remember, most of these offerings, except for the burnt offerings, most of these offerings include a portion for God and a portion for the priest, because the church needs to be supported. If anyone sins, this is now the guilt offering. This is where this chapter should have started. The guilt is the final of the 5 offerings. The Lord said to Moses, notice it starts the same way as the others, so it makes sense. Like the first 4 chapters all start with the Lord said to Moses. In chapter 5, they wait until verse 14. The Lord said to Moses, when anyone is unfaithful to the Lord by sinning unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things, they are to bring to the Lord as a penalty a ram from the flock, one without defect and proper value in silver, according to the sanctuary shekel. It is a guilt offering. They must make restitution for what they have failed to do in regard to the holy things, pay an additional penalty of 1/5 of its value, and give it all to the priest. The priest will make atonement for them with the ram as a guilt offering, and they will be forgiven. So notice here, there's actually a fine involved So people that think that fines from the police are bad, fines have been around for 4,000 years, but that you pay a fine that is equivalent to the value of whatever your sin was. So, which is I don't know how they calculate that, but they have a way of calculating it. If anyone sins and does what is forbidden in any one of the Lord's commands, even though they do not know it, they are guilty and will be held responsible. They are to bring to the priest as a guilt offering ram from the flock, one without defect of proper value. Wow, this almost sounds word for word what I just read. The way priests will make atonement for them wrong they have committed unintentionally, and they will be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. They have been guilty of wrongdoing against the Lord. So in these various offerings, yes, you make a guilt offering, depending on the type of sin, you make a guilt offering and a sin offering, or just a sin offering. Then you do a burnt offering. Then you should be doing a fellowship offering and a grain offering. So these offerings are actually to be done in a very specific way. And in the next chapter, we're going to start getting into some of the nitty gritty of all that, which I'm looking forward to. And I've actually been, like I said, I've been doing some research on this outside of what's in here, so that once we get through all the offering stuff, I'm going to have probably one episode where we just break down how all the offerings work. All right, so now quickly, I will go through some of the chat, and then I will sign off because my dinner is probably getting cold right now, and let me check. I know I got a text. It was probably the wife saying that the food is ready or something. Okay, about 5 minutes, 6:20. Okay. Let me text her. Oops. Almost done. All right. All right, so to the chat for just a couple of minutes here. Instead of a single manuscript, it ends up looking like an instruction manual. Yeah, it really does. Trustin says, good rule of thumb is where a verse is slighted. When a verse is cited, read the whole chapter at least. I would agree, unless, a lot of times people will read the first or last verse of a chapter, in which case you should what I usually try to do is at least skim to see context, if the 10 or so verses before, the 10 or so verses after, to see if that verse is truly in isolation, or if the following verses are continuing on the same topic, or if the previous verses were on the same topic. Because there are some parts of the Bible where each verse may actually have a separate meaning. For example, Tristan, in our small group, we went through the book of Proverbs, and some of those sections of Proverbs, it's like each verse is a completely independent proverb of the proverb before and the proverb after. However, most of the Bible isn't written like that. Let's see. That's what happened in the final episode of Seinfeld. I'm not sure what you mean. They got arrested for failing to report a crime. Yeah, I vaguely remember that. But yes, that is, that even though in the United States, I don't know that it's a crime to fail. Well, they failed to report, and what this is specifically talking about is failing to testify. But yeah, same idea. And actually, if you get a summons or a subpoena to appear before the court, and you refuse, that is contempt of court. So you got to be careful of that. They don't consider just watching someone else get robbed and doing nothing to be a crime. Depends on where you are. You got to be careful about that. But generally speaking, if you witness a crime, if possible, you should intervene. Josiah says, wow, I didn't think you were going to be on today. Yeah, I'm actually got all my live streams in this week, even though this one's going to be super duper short. Mark 135, Josiah says, the New Ages came around talking about focusing, finding their navels and stuff like that. I don't remember what Mark 135 says, so let me see. Mark 135. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Well, yeah, the thing is that that's an example that honestly many of us should be following more. Is that basically, especially in times of stress, what's the first thing Jesus does? Pray. What did he do right before he got arrested and crucified? He prayed, and he knew it was coming. So yeah, if in bad times, you should be praying. But as Paul kind of points out later, in good times you should also be praying, it's just a different kind of prayer. In good times, you're praying God, thanking Him for all the good things that you have. Thank you so much, Lord, that I have this crazy Herbie robot with a stormtrooper helmet on. Thank you for the comfy chair that I'm sitting in. Thank you for the computer that I've got. All that, right? You should be thanking God for that as when you're in a good time, so that when you're in a bad time, you can say, okay, Lord, I truly do appreciate all the great stuff you've given me, but can you help me get through this situation? And one thing that is like, and I think Jesus gave a great example here in Gethsemane, is that you shouldn't be just saying, okay, Lord, make the pain go away, which that'd be nice. But Jesus said, if there is a way, Lord, for this cup to pass on, please do it. But your will be done, and that's something we need to remember, is that sometimes it is God's will that we go through some stuff. And you know what I mean by stuff. And so we got to be careful that we don't base our faith on whether or not God helps us. Because sometimes, in fact, I like, even though it's not a theologically sound movie, it's a fun little movie oh God, there was the one with Jim Carrey, and then they did the sequel with the little wienery guy from 40-Year-Old Virgin. I'm sure you guys already put it in the chat, but you know who I'm talking about. And in the sequel, where he thought he was basically Noah, when God was pretending to be a Starbucks employee and talking to his wife, and she was so frustrated, and he said, well, have you tried praying? And she's like, well, I have, but there hasn't been really an answer. He says, are you sure? Because if you pray to God for patience, do you think He just gives you patience, or does He give you the opportunity to be patient? If you pray to God for bravery, does He just make you brave, or does He give you the opportunity to be brave? And that's actually a very interesting point, is that sometimes God does give us what we want. We just don't realize it because He's not giving it to us in the way we want Him to. Beetlejuice versus Ghostbusters. Man, that's a tough one. But I think Beetlejuice probably takes that one because I don't think he'd be dumb enough to look into the trap. He's a trooper. I'm not sure he's done. Khan, dinner is a dish best served cold. Jeez. Cited meaning referred to by naming it, and not sure what that last thing was, but it was nothing. All right, Josiah says, next time Wesley Curry the second comes on here, make him say something that makes sense or just ban him. I'm not going to ban people unless they are doing unless they're literally threatening others, or they are true spammers. Like we used to have a wave of people who would just post the same crap over and over and over, and it usually links to pornographic sites and stuff. Revenge is what's for dinner. I'm about to eat dinner too. Bruce Almighty, thank you. And then it was Evan Almighty was the second one, and that's the one I was thinking of. And Steve Carell is the actor. Thank you again. I don't know why I forgot. And then he says, Evan Almighty. It's from the monologue from Morgan Freeman. Yes, Morgan Freeman played God. And even though, like I said, it's not a biblically sound movie, I think that is a wonderful point to take. Let's see. Michael home from Hooked on Missions. Well, I hope you're hooked on missions then. When are you going to Uganda? Challenges in life are so that we can grow. Exactly. And sometimes, we don't want to. I don't want to go through what I'm going through right now. I really don't. I got two major problems going on at the exact same time, both of which are physically uncomfortable in addition to the MS. And one of them potentially life-threatening. So I really don't want to deal with this. However, God's will be done. If it wants to torture you, may watch Section 31 and repeat for a week. Oh, don't even threaten that. Miss Moneypenny's making supper. Everybody say hi to Moneypenny. Trustin says, sorry you're going through another bit of trouble. Appreciate the live streams. No, you know what? I'm here because I'm supposed to be, and that's the thing. I think part of this is like a test. Will I continue to do the live streams despite adversity? And the answer is yes, I will. As long as I'm physically able, I will continue to do live streams. On second viewing, Superman is pretty good, yet flawed. Fantastic Four remains excellent. I would agree with that. I like Superman a lot, but I like Fantastic Four more. Let's see, second, Jesus tried to get out of the crucifixion too. So nobody is perfect. Yes. And that's something, I wouldn't say nobody is perfect. Jesus was perfect, but even a perfect person doesn't want to suffer. That wouldn't even make sense. If Jesus wanted to suffer, then there would be no sacrifice in his crucifixion. If he went there and he's like, oh, this is great, then that would have meant nothing, which is what many of the atheists think, that it means nothing because he was risen afterwards, but he still had to go through all the stuff. Thank you so much, Preston. $5 to tip the doctor. I appreciate it, because if you tip the doctor,
$5 to tip the doctor, thumbs up sign.
That's, that's the thing. All right, guys, so with that, I am going to wrap it up so I can have dinner. Thank you, Trustin. Once again, you are a buddy, and I do appreciate it. As the rest of you, you're a bunch of jerks because, you didn't give me your money. I'm kidding.